I have been a member of Midwestern Rail since late 1974 when it was founded. One of the original members had the idea that a museum should be formed, and for a long time we struggled with getting a location for the museum. We ran into the same problem time after time. People would say, "We would be quite happy to sponsor you. Where is your location?" Well, we don't have one right away. We would find a place where we thought we could locate, and they would say, "Well, who are your sponsors?" And so we were caught in this catch-22. We did finally get into the CN train shed, courtesy of VIA.
Welcome to the Winnipeg Railway Museum. The museum is staffed 100% by volunteers from the Midwestern Railway Association. The association is a registered charity and nonprofit organization. Funding for the museum derives from its membership dues, door admissions, and tours to daycares, schools, special groups such as the Scouts and seniors, and a small grant from the provincial government. The museum's mandate is to procure, preserve, and present the rail history of the area bounded by St. Paul, Minnesota in the south, the Hudson Bay in the north, the lakeheads in the east, and the foothills of the Rockies. Volunteers are very important to this museum because they operate it. And if anybody should be interested in volunteering, please do not hesitate to contact the museum. You can contact us at our website, www.wpgrailwaymuseum.com.
The Countess was one of the very first locomotives on the Western Canadian mainland, and it had been preserved, and in 1977 it was moved from its location near the Disraeli Bridge and put for safekeeping into the Weston Shops. There it remained until it came up here in 1992.
The Countess is the oldest of two remaining locomotives built by M. Baird and Company in Philadelphia in 1872. She came to Winnipeg in 1877. She had the first steel laying contract, which was to connect Winnipeg with St. Paul, Minnesota. She then worked east to Thunder Bay, Ontario, and west as far as Golden, BC. Upon arriving in Golden, BC, Canadian Pacific sold her to the Columbia River Lumber Company, who immediately tore her apart and used her boiler to run a sawmill. 1907 rolls around, and Canadian Pacific realizes the Countess still exists. They want her back. Well, Columbia River Lumber Company just happened to be owned by Canadian Northern Railway, and they weren't prepared to give the locomotive back to their competitor. So the mayor of Winnipeg, Mayor Waugh, received a phone call which told him, "You better get out to Golden right away." Upon his arrival, Columbia River Lumber donated it to the city. When the mayor approached Canadian Pacific to bring it back and restore it, they demanded it be returned to them immediately. Showing the bill of sale, they agreed to bring her back to Winnipeg, restore her, and renumber her Canadian Pacific number 1. As she came to Winnipeg, ringing her bell, it would sound much like this.
This is a 1900 class locomotive, a General Motors GMD1. When Canadian National changed from steam locomotives to diesel, they purchased these. They were used on light passenger trains and for switching passenger trains. We're very proud to have this, as this locomotive actually worked here, and I actually ran this. Now we're both in the museum. We'll go up and we'll go into the cab now and have a look around, and you can sit in the engineer's seat. Most people are quite thrilled to be able to do that. Here we are in the cab of the 1900, and The control stand here has the switches for the headlight and for the various controls on the engine.
We have a classic example of a CN 50-ton steel caboose. Built in 1973, she was donated by CN to the museum in 1993. Cabooses have been basically replaced by this 40-pound end-of-train unit, which does all the functions that the caboose once served.
This section of the gallery is dedicated to the struggles women endured through history of the railways in Canada. Women were not welcome in the railway industry, as men figured they were more suited for more traditional roles, such as mothers, nuns, nurses, etc. There were a number of exceptional women who broke the rules, but gaining employment was extremely difficult. One of the tests that the women had to pass was to lift and carry this heavy coupler to prove their strength. These displays show the changes that women went through the workforce over the past century. These women revolutionized the way the workforce is today. Some of them now even driving trains, doing the heavy repair work, and some even being CEOs of railway companies.
We have been building displays and we have been restoring equipment. Many of the pieces that we have need to be restored, and it is a long-term project.
One of the many projects we have in the museum, which we need to work on, restoration projects, volunteer hours and things, is this Water District caboose. It dates from the late 1800s, one of a kind like so many things we have. As you can see, it's in pretty poor shape. We've had a material estimate made. It needs about $7,000 worth of material. It needs a couple of thousand hours of volunteer labor. But when it's done, it'll fit in perfectly with our era. We've got the construction train that it really belongs to, which is where it'll ultimately go. And it will give anyone that comes in a very good idea of the way things used to be. And any volunteers we can find, they're the ones we need to make it work. All the equipment in this part of the museum owned and operated by the city of Winnipeg. And the first of them was this car here, 1946 Packard. When I show people this, I always ask them, what is a car on railway wheels doing with a steering wheel? The answer is, it was used to apply the brakes when they wanted to make the thing stay when they were done. The vehicle you see to my left is a Mack rail bus built by the Mack Company of Pennsylvania in 1922. It was purchased by Manitoba Hydro in 1929. It was used until 1963, running between Lac de Bonnet and Pointe du Bois, at which time the rails were pulled out. This is the driver's station of the Mack bus. You'll notice it also has a great big steering wheel to apply the brakes to. Fairly simple controls, gas pedal here, gear stick here. There used to be a throttle here. There used to be switches here for the lights and the heating and everything, but little munchkins have been in here. Also done a number on the windshield. Seated 29, it's got a big luggage compartment at the back. On a good day on the tramway, it would run at 45 miles an hour, but because the tramway was very twisty and the rails weren't very good, it rarely attained that speed. The one quite spectacular accident it was in where the other vehicle came out second best, but it ran until about 1997 and did very well in all those years. Every railway in the world has what they call a yard goat. They use it to make up trains, to break up trains in the yard. They use it to spot freight cars here and there. On occasion, they even use them to haul emergency equipment around if something is broken down. This is our yard goat. It's a Davenport locomotive. We call it Lindsay. It was built in 1927 and sold to Hydro in 1927. A few years ago, we had a plague of caterpillars in the area. One day, the engine here was out on the road, and it ran into a patch of caterpillars, and the traction motor on this wheel ran away and burned out. Hydro was unable to get parts for it. They had to replace it. but in keeping with their generosity towards us, they donated it to us. We have 2,000 feet of track in this museum. You'll find something new, different, unique, something you haven't seen before. Well worth a visit, and you're welcome whenever we're open.